Hello, lighting people. Today I have an interesting thing to talk about. The day has come. We are going to talk about AI and its use in lighting, MA3, Lua programming, all of that stuff. Well, mostly just the Lua part, but specifically Lua for MA3. And today I'm going to compare ChatGPT and Grok and see how they work with Lua for MA3 programming and give you my thoughts and conclusions on how it can be used and when it should be used, how I have used it, and show you what it has saved me time on, what it has caused me grief on, and give you my recommendation for how I would use it and how I plan to use it in the future, or plan not to use it, as the case may be. So we're going to start out with, as I said, we're going to compare ChatGPT and Grok. So I'm going to start with ChatGPT. And I've written down some questions. I'm going to type the exact same prompts into both of these AI engines, and we're going to see what they give us as a result. I'm going to give it 3 different prompts. We're going to start with super easy, and we're going to get more complicated, and we're going to see how they handle these things. So I'm going to start off with super simple. How do you store a sequence in MA3 using Lua? All right, you can store a sequence using CMD store sequence 1. That is correct. If you want to store it with a specific name or overwrite, you can extend the command. That is correct information. I like this. If you want to store dynamically, that is very accurate. That is a good note. That is also a great note. It's doing this correctly, and it's great that it is giving you that information. CMD is correct. One thing that I have as a criticism is the fact that it is not showing me the fact that there are alternate functions that can be used. CMD is not the only one, and in most cases in a larger script, it's not the best one. But this works. This is fine. Let's try it in Grok. I'm going to type out the exact same words. All right. CMD, the store command, use store sequence. We're going to use a seqnum and a qnum. Okay. This is really deep. That's a little bit more complex than we really needed to do. But one thing I really appreciate about this is that it's giving me a function. And so if you place this code exactly as it is in GrandMA3, it is going to work exactly the way it is. Whereas this one, it just gave you the code. If you copy and paste this into MA3, it's not going to work. You have to at least add a return function end before and after. So this is correct. Alternative without a specific queue, store sequence. Okay. That is correct. I love how detailed this is about permissions and everything. That's really great. All right, so let's go back here and let's try our second question. The second question is a little bit more complex. Okay. So it says it'll prompt the user for a song name, search for a sequence, copy that sequence to sequence 1, overriding if needed, assign it to executor 301, and display a pop-up confirmation. Let's have a look. Song name, text input, that's correct. If the song name is nil or empty space, then message box, operation canceled, no song entered, and then we return, so we end. All right, local song seek equals data pool sequences, find song name. I have never heard of the find function, so I'm going to have to look into that and see if that actually works. If songseek is equal to nil, presumably that means that find returned a false. It wasn't able to be finding anything. Then we provide the user with a message box that says sequence not found, no sequence named this was found, and return. Makes sense? Then, presuming that we've not already returned for some reason, copy the sequence song name at sequence1/overwrite, assign that sequence at executor 301, inform the user, success, sequence, song name, copy to sequence 1, and assign to executor 301. That looks great. Again, criticism. First off, I need to check and see if this part actually works because I've never heard of that. Secondly, this is not placed inside of a function. This code by itself placed in MA3 will not run. It will give you an error. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this into MA3 and give it a shot and see how it works. I'll have to first put in return function, then paste it, and then end. And let's see what happens. Song name. Oh, wow. That worked. It exists. Find works. I did not know that that was a thing at all. That is super useful, actually. And I'm going to have to use that in the future myself. So this was a major benefit from ChatGPT on that point. Because if I didn't do it that way, I would have to be searching for something that matches the name. This is way faster and easier. Definitely going to try that. What I might do is see if I can find any documentation or play with it and see what exactly it's doing to find that. Presumably, it's just looking for something to match the name, but I should verify exactly how that works. All right, let's go to Grok. I don't want to type this out again, so I'm just going to copy the exact text and paste it in here. Okay, so it says it will do this. Prompt the user for a song name using pop-up input dialog. Search for a sequence with that name in the data pool. Copy the found sequence to sequence 1. Assign sequence 1 to executor 301. Display a pop-up to confirm the action was successful. And here we have some explanation and notes. It's interesting that it wrote it this way. But let's have a look at the code. It actually created a function. Thank you, Grok. ChatGPT just can't not get that part right. Okay, so we set song name equal to text input. That looks great. I don't know why it has 3 values here. I'm not sure what this is for. I'll have to give that a try and see what that does. If not song name or song name, message box error, no song name provided. Okay, I like that. Access the data pool. Data pool.sequences. Found seq equals nil for I equals 1 to sequences do. So that's going through from 1 to the number of total sequences. If the sequence name is equal to song name, then found sequence equals sequences I break. That's how I would typically do this without using that find function that, again, I need to look into and see exactly what it does. So I trust this. It looks like it would work. If not found sequence, then we provide an error and it's going to say sequence was not found. Return. Then copy the sequence at sequence 1, assign sequence 1 at executor 301. I don't know why it keeps trying to use this string.format. That shouldn't be necessary. Okay, actually, no, I do see. It's because of this. I don't do it that way. It should work just fine with the way ChatGPT was doing it, but this found sequence.number, I'm impressed that it got that correct, but that does look correct. So then we assign it. Success. The sequence was copied to sequence 1 and assigned to 301. And again, an advantage with this one is that it actually does the function stuff correctly. Let's copy this and see how it goes in MA3. Enter the song sequence name. I will do the same song again. Oh. We had an error on line 23. What's on line 23? Oh, this does not show the line numbers. I'll have to check it in here. So what's happening right now is it's looking for a sequence that doesn't exist, and it's looking for its name. So what we need in here is something that will do if is object valid sequences UI, then, and we would ideally indent this further, and then oh, I missed a parentheses. Enter the sign. Copied, assigned to executor 301. Okay, so that worked. It had one error though, and so that one error was with the lack of checking to make sure that the sequence existed before doing that, which again, what ChatGPT did with the find function that I did not know about actually worked just fine. So this is one line of code as opposed to here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, actually 11 because I had to add 2 more to make this work. So that's interesting. Let's go back to ChatGPT and put in our third prompt. The reason I decided to do this way is because if it knows what it's doing, it knows that this cannot be accomplished with MessageBox. So it's going to have to write a custom UI element script, and I want to see how that works. Okay, it says show custom UI. It is creating a function, so that's cool. And then layout, it says title, back color, widgets. So it's acting like layout is, oh, okay, no, that makes sense. Then we go, what? It's saying it can use MessageBox to do this layout, which I am not aware is possible. And then if result check 1 is false or 2 is false, and interesting. Also very interesting to me that it figured out that you would want to have potentially effects or dimmers or speeds of things. So that's kind of cool. And then we call the function. So that is correct. Let's copy this and see how it works. No reference to main function found for plugin. Hold up. Local function, and it should say return. The way this should be doing it, since this is a function, you need a main function, is it should end with return, show custom UI, and no parentheses. I'm just going to fix that in here. And that's not a 2x2 grid. That clearly did not work at all. It doesn't know what it's doing, so that's not possible. It's not possible to arrange these things for the message box, which is what I thought. I've never seen that kind of thing before. It doesn't know what widgets are, and so it got the title and the back color, but it doesn't know. Actually, I don't think that's the right way to put back color in either. I don't think it actually got that. But it doesn't know what widgets are, and apparently, I think because it ran into an error here, it didn't attempt to display the button. But no, actually, buttons isn't the correct term either. You can't do that. So that was just wrong. Nope, it doesn't. Or if it does, it doesn't do it this way. I'm not aware that it supports custom widget layouts. If I am incorrect about that, somebody please let me know, because that would be very useful. But if it does do that, it doesn't do it this way because this did not work. I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it into Grok and see what Grok tells me. Okay, so write a script to create a UI element. Below is a Lua script for GrandMA 3 that creates a UI element pop-up dialog with 2 checkboxes and 2 user inputs arranged in a 2x2 grid. It uses the message box function. Okay, I guess, again, we'll have to see if that actually works because I'm not aware that that's possible. So it says create custom UI, dialog equals, we've got title, icon, back color. That looks correct to me. That's how that should be written. So ChatGPT was wrong about that. Message, no messages, we're using fields for layout. Okay, you can just omit this line. You don't need to put that in, but okay. Fields, I've never seen that before. We put in a checkbox with all of this information, a separate checkbox. This isn't an input. Then we put a checkbox, another input, and then a command. Commands is correct. That is what we're looking for. I did not know that you could give it position with their height information. I guess we'll see if that works. Result, okay. And then we print the results. All right, let's copy this and see if it works. Oops, it did not work. We got a button, at least it did get the commands part right. It's saying it can't resolve the object addresses. It's looking for incorrect value types. When it comes to printing these, it's not having any results because there were no checkboxes to begin with to provide results. Now, for the record, I did try some of these prompts the other day, and when I was working with ChatGPT, I did have an issue where was it? When it was doing this whole thing, it did this incorrectly. It tried to say show data, parentheses, dot sequences, and that was obviously incorrect. And so I was having that wrong, but Grok also messed it up the other day. Where is this? This one. Grok also messed this up, but it was a lot closer. And in that particular instance, Grok did this slightly differently and it worked the first time. I didn't have to add anything to it. So the other day when I was doing this, I wasn't being as careful about putting the exact same prompts in, but those kinds of errors I don't think have anything to do with what prompts I put in. I think the AI has actually learned something. Plus also it's not going to give you the exact same response every single time, but it seems like they may have both improved somewhat since then. What I am disappointed with is the fact that this did not work. I feel like that shouldn't have happened that way. So today, it worked perfectly fine on both of the first two prompts. I just had minor changes to make in both cases. With the third one, however, neither of them managed to make it work. Now, the other day, I was having more severe issues, and if I remember correctly, I think I was able to get Grok's to work with minor tweaks on the second one, but ChatGPT's was not working. My conclusion through all of this is Grok is doing slightly better, for sure, because it's giving me whole functions and things like that, things that you definitely need in order to be able to run it immediately the way it is. This is, it tried here. It didn't work. But for both of the others, it just gave me code. It didn't put it in a function, and that's not going to work. So that's really annoying. Grok seems to be better suited for things to do with coding, or at least to do with this. I will state that I'm not a regular AI user. I have not used these things for really anything besides this. I just decided to try it and see how it would work out. And it is somewhat helpful. Now, in this case, I know how to do these things on my own, and I have code that I would copy and paste and tweak slightly in order to build something like this. But plus this is also a simple example and you wouldn't necessarily want to write a script just to do that. It would be more complicated, more thought processes involved. And we can see that the more complicated of a prompt you give it, the more likely you are to have something just come out wrong, like this one where both of these just made stuff up off the top of their heads and it did not work. There's nothing about this that works. This is not how Messagebox works at all. So, enough of that. For now, I'm actually going to show you what I did with AI for myself. Now, to start off with, I'm going to show you a background of what I was trying to attain with this. And so, this is my show file that I use at the church, and we have all these keylight sequences. I don't think I need this. We have all these keylight sequences here, that are programmed for different numbers of singers. So for example, we'll just go with 5. We have, anytime we have 5 singers, they stand in certain locations, spaced out evenly. When we have 4, they're standing in different locations. And we have 6, they're standing in different locations. And so I have 3 lights that I can use to light them. We have a main wash light, and then we just light whoever's leading a song individually. The first number here will refer to which light it is. So this is light number 1, light number 2, light number 1, light number 2, light number 3. Then this is saying for 5 singers, this is pointing at location 1, this is location 2, location 3, 4, 5. And then I have some extras that I have some different options. So we have key light 2 pointing at 2 of 5. We also have key light 1 pointing at 2 of 5. We have key light 1 and key light 3 for 3 of 5. And we have 2 and 3 for 4 of 5. So we have some different options of which lights to use. And the reason why we have that is because if I'm going to transition from one person singing to another person singing, it's going to look better if they're using different lights from each other. And if there's a co-lead, it's very important that they're using different lights from each other, because otherwise I can't light them both simultaneously more than everyone else. So I wanted a plugin that would find out from the names of the singers that are attached to the song. So when I put in the songs, I put in the singers' names as well, so it shows who's leading which song. It would take those singer names from the songs and use them to determine which singers cannot be using the same key light as each other, and then assign the correct sequences so that we have everyone lit by a different key light than whoever's singing before and after them. So when I set out to do this, it was a pretty big project to figure this out. One thing I definitely decided to do is use tags on each sequence. So each sequence has a tag for the fixture number. So this is fixture number 3. Total singers 5, so it's for the total of 5 positions, and Vox 4, it's for the 4th position out of 5. So I have these tags attached to every single one of these key light sequences so that I know exactly which one's for which. And then my code goes through them and finds out based on the tags which sequence it is. And that makes it so that I can move these sequences, change their names, and it doesn't matter. I'm basically using the tags as metadata, because that's not something I'm going to be accidentally changing or likely to change for the convenience of something else. So I'll leave the tags on the sequences, and it's going to go find which sequence it is based on the exact combination of tags. It's going to relabel it, and it's also going to add it to a table so that we know for this number of singers, we have this light as an option for this location. Then once we do that, we also get the information about what order they're singing in. And then we have to make a table of the correct information based on what order they're singing in and which key lights are available to light each position. So to do that, I asked Grok to give me an algorithm that would sort this table based on that table and so on. And I didn't put any MA3 API into this. I was not asking it to deal with MA3 stuff. I just gave it specifically, I have this table, sort this one based on this one. And I mean, I don't remember exactly how I said it, but I gave it this prompt and it gave me back a algorithm. And it's this part from here to, basically to here. I changed all of this part afterwards. It was just giving information back. That was written by the AI, and it just named these tables and things after letters, and I changed the names to things that made sense for me. But it gave me back this algorithm, and I had to go over it very carefully and make sure that I understood what it was doing, that it was doing what I wanted it to. When it told me what the result would be from running this algorithm, Grok told me incorrectly what the result would be. And I saw that and I was like, that's not the result I want, but it's pretty close. So I'll try this and then see if maybe I can just tweak something and make it work. It ended up actually working the way I wanted it to, and Grok was just wrong about what the outcome would be. So the code was correct, but the description was not. The problem I did have was when I was running this, so you see in this loop right here, it looks to see if this table exists. If the table does not exist, it creates the table. And then it goes and adds information to that table. The problem is it was also trying to add information to this table right here, and this table did not exist. So it was trying to add to this table, which it just created. It was trying to add to this table, which it had created the time before, and it was trying to add to this table, which did not yet exist. It wouldn't exist until the next time it went through the loop. But obviously, it's trying to add to it before it is then created. So I had to add these 3 lines right here to just create that table so that it wouldn't throw an error trying to add to something that didn't exist. But once I did that, this worked. Now, I did spend quite a lot of time going through this and making sure that it actually did everything I wanted it to. There was some extraneous code that I actually didn't need. It was just in here, kind of like what we saw where Grok was trying to put in a line for a message and just have it empty. And I was like, you could just omit that line, actually. It had some extraneous code that I just deleted once I made sure that I knew that I didn't need it. And then I did have to still work it into my larger plugin and make sure that I was getting the correct information into the correct tables before getting to here, and that I was getting the correct information out once I was finished. But it did end up working very well. I still had to spend a lot of time making sure that I really understood what it was doing, but I do feel like it saved me a lot of time on actually writing it. If I had actually tried to write this myself, I do think it would have taken more time. So this was helpful. The only problem is I did have to have a really good understanding of Lua to be able to troubleshoot and fix it because there was an issue. However, overall, I would say that the result from this was way better than trying to get it to do things with MA3 API. These AIs just really don't know everything about MA3, and so anytime you're trying to do something with it that applies to MA3 specifically, you're going to have more issues, whereas Lua as a language, it's better with. And this is also reflected by some conversations I've had with other people who've tried to use it as a replacement for the manual or to write macros or plugins for them. It just tends to have issues with anything that's specific to MA3. That's not to say that it's not improving more, because as you can see, it is improving basically like every day. Every time you use it, it gets better, it seems. But I would be very concerned about trying to use this and expecting it to work right off the bat for anything at all, really, but especially anything specific to MA3 API. That is my summary on that. So those have been my experiences. I would definitely be curious to hear if anybody else has had a different experience or more information that would be interesting to know about this, because it is an interesting topic for sure. But as a general rule, it seems like my conclusion is you should learn your coding skills for yourself and not trust AI. And I think that's a generally good guideline. But another interesting thing is it does seem like Grok is working somewhat better than ChatGPT. The gulf doesn't seem as wide today as it did the other day when I was working with it, but it still is working a little bit better. So I would recommend starting with Grok if you're going to use AI for anything to do with this. And aside from that, I am going to see you in a couple weeks in another video, and I hope you have an amazing time writing some more Lua code with all of the new information that you can get from what I've shown you today and from AI if you choose to use that.